Hello, this is Tom Bengtson. I'm with Noah Wilcox, who is chairman and president of the Grand Rapids State Bank in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. And he's also the president of, or I should say the chairman of the Independent Community Bankers of America, recently installed at their convention last month. Hello, Noah, how are you doing?
Hi, Tom. I'm doing well. Working from home like so many other people and adjusting to life at a distance through Zoom and things like that. But things are going well. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, we're glad you can join us. Now, what in the world do you make of the last couple of weeks? It's really been unprecedented.
Yeah, it has been unprecedented. I was saying to somebody a week or so ago that, a banker ought to only have to live through one crisis in their career. And I've already done that along with so many other people with the Great Recession, and here we are. And this is something that's, quite a bit different, being that, we have a global pandemic that has triggered at least some kind of hopefully temporary economic crisis, but a crisis nonetheless. And I think, the community bank industry has responded exceptionally well to it. Challenge seems to be our middle name, and we just put our shoulder to the wheel. So, the first week was a little bit interesting, kind of adapting to this new normal, but I think talking to bankers around the country, the last few weeks have really shown that they can adapt and they can adjust their operating business model, and then they can just move on and be there for their customers. So sure. We're really focused on our customers and our communities and the health of our staff.
All right. And what do you make of the payroll protection program? That's been all the talk. Banks have been very busy executing that program. How would you assess that's gone so far?
Well, the rollout was a little bit bumpy. I think the program is well intentioned and it's working. We had some trouble getting banks online. As you know, I have two charters, and my Minnesota Lakes Bank charter, we were on day one. Took Grand Rapids a couple extra days to get access to the system. We had added additional users to the E-Trans system in anticipation of the demand that we were seeing, and those users have yet to be set up by the SBA. So there are some hitches still in the system, I think. But once people got access, you just get to it. And some days it was real slow and it would crash, and other days, you could get things through. So I think community bankers did a good job getting the money to where it was intended to be, not publicly traded companies, but actually small businesses. And very pleased that the Senate passed last night on a voice vote additional funding, specifically with $60 billion of additional funding earmarked for just community banks. So we're anticipating the House vote tomorrow, and the question now becomes, when does the SBA let us back into the system? And I think the demand is going to be crushing, frankly. There's a lot of pent-up demand here in the week or so that's gone by since the funds ran out.
It does seem like a lot of small business owners, a lot of companies are learning about the program just as round one was exhausted. So yeah, I'm sure there is a huge demand. You're feeling like the industry will be ready to go as soon as that money is clear to be available.
Yeah, somebody asked me yesterday if I thought the SBA was making enhancements to the infrastructure so that it would be more stable and the throughput would be a better experience. And I said, all we're expecting is what we had last time. Plug us back into the matrix and let us get to work, because I think that's the point. And I think you're right about the fact that some small business owners were either learning about it as the program wound up phase one, or maybe had not decided whether or not they wanted to apply. Well, those people have all applied by now. Yeah. So, and we've continued to accept applications and improve them internally so that when the system does come back online, we're ready to start pushing those approvals through.
Sure. And throughout this whole pandemic, a lot of business practices have changed. One, even being just using Zoom and using video conferencing has exploded, and it's really become an integral part of the way banks and other businesses work today. What are some of what changes do you think will last beyond the conclusion of the pandemic? How is this crisis changing the way banks will do business into the future?
Well, it's a great question. And I think, I mean, I have some thoughts on it, but I think how long this goes on will continue to have an impact on how that evolves. I think the working remotely, that genie's out of the bottle. I mean, we have demonstrated that an overwhelming majority of bank employees, if needed, can work and perform their job duties from their kitchen table or wherever. And I suspect there may be some lasting impact in that regard with people that either prefer that type of situation, or, you know, banks that maybe want to move to more of that model for certain staff. And I also think that, you know, how customers and staff interact in a reopened environment will look different. I think you'll see, you know, probably some protective elements put in place. You probably see directional signage. You may see organizations that limit the number of people in office at one given time until social distancing guidelines are relaxed, things like that. But I also think the other side of this is how employers, you know, community banks included, view paid time away from the office and sick pay and things like that. I think the thing that I saw right out of the chute was, listen, if you're not feeling well, we want you to stay home, and we're not going to burn up your PTO days. We're just going to pay you to keep the rest of the staff healthy, whether you're working from home or not. And I think that's another one where, you know, the genie's out of the bottle on that. I think people are focused on the health and well-being of their staff, and if that means paying people to stay home while they're ill, I think you'll see more of that, or an adjusted attitude towards that.
Sure. What about just in terms of developing relationships? Relationship banking is really kind of the backbone of the community banking industry, but it seems like it's a little bit harder to do through video conferencing, having to lock your lobby, having to work through the drive-through window. Are you confident that the industry will be able to get back to the practices that allow for the development of a meaningful relationship with customers?
Yeah, I think we'll get back there, Tom. It might look different. You know, in our shops, we've used Zoom, for example, as one way to meet with clients, whether that's to talk about projects they're thinking about, or to do some review work with them, or whatever it might be, anything we would have done in the office. We're trying to do that as much as we can by video rather than by telephone. It doesn't replace a person-to-person meeting, but you can still look somebody in the eye, and, you know, you can see them smile, and you know, having that emotional connection visually, I think that's really at the heart of relationships. And, you know, as much as you want to be able to shake hands or give somebody a hug, this is the next best thing when we're in such a difficult time. So I think most community banks that I've talked to around the country are working hard in that regard to try and maintain that relationship. And, you know, it could be that video conferencing has some permanent place in the new normal, post-crisis, that it's a tool. You know, for example, right after we closed our lobbies, we implemented DocuSign. I mean, it's something that I've been talking about for 2 or 3 years, and it just was never a priority, because we are relationship based. And, you know, I'd rather jump in the car and drive out to my customer and sign the loan docs and shake their hand. But this is something that was pretty easy for us to implement. And it has really facilitated our ability to conduct business very efficiently. The user response has been amazing. I mean, people love it. And so I think, like, even that, I think that will be a part of our new normal.
Sure.
I don't see us going away from that. I'm sure we'll still do in-person closings down the line, but I would think probably the majority of our loans will be signed electronically like that.
Yeah, sure. Hey, and so let me get your read on the economy. That's kind of what people are really worried about as we work through the pandemic. When we come out on the other side of the health crisis, will we still be in the middle of an economic crisis? And I think you've got a very unique perspective, given you're in 2 markets. You're in northern Minnesota, which is one kind of economy, and then you're kind of in exurban Twin Cities, which is a different. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, I've been looking at it more from a national perspective than just a regional one or a state one. I think there's a couple of factors at play. Number one is, how long does the pandemic crisis play out? What does that look like? I mean, I think the time span is a factor. How long do governor-ordered closures of businesses persist. I think that's another very important factor. And then I think, to some extent, the support programs like PPP that are available, how long are they available for? So I'll give you an example. If you have 8 weeks of funding and you have a 32-week closure of businesses, does it match up? And the answer is no. And so my question is, what happens at the end of 8 weeks? How long can those businesses sustain without some kind of program matched to the length of the crisis? And I don't know the answer to that, and I suspect it varies pretty wildly. But in addition to that, and I just had an ELCO meeting this morning, and one of the questions I posed to the group was, how long can an economy, even as strong as ours, withstand this level of spending and this level of debt? Mm-hmm. Some component of the economy is going to break under that strain eventually if it's not brought under control. I don't know if that's late 70s, early 80s inflation style type of stuff and 18% mortgages and all that. I have no idea how it's going to manifest itself, but I think, as a student of economics, one thing's for certain, it just can't sustain that much pressure indefinitely.
Sure.
So it either has to be corrected. I don't know, maybe they start issuing 100-year bonds or something. There's a lot of ways to get at it, and I'm sure people far smarter than myself are thinking about those things. But those are the questions I guess I'm asking, and eventually I think we'll be fine. Because we always are. We're gonna figure out a way to fix it, and there might be some dark days, and then another boom again. But
sure.
If this pandemic is shorter lived, then I think you maybe have more of a U-shaped recovery, and you're back on a path to a strong economy. Because right now, my belief is, specifically in Minnesota, but even nationwide, I think the underlying economy is actually quite strong. You just have this wet blanket called COVID laying over the top of it, and how long that pandemic lays over the top of the economy is going to be the key to how much actual damage it does to the strength of the underlying economy.
Sure. Well, we've got about 1 minute remaining in our interview, but so let me just ask you to reflect on your role as chairman of ICBA. You've been in that role maybe about 6 weeks, I think. So you're just barely into it, but what do you make of it so far?
Well, you couldn't have scripted it, Tom. I did not think I would become ICBA's first virtual chairman. We've held a lot of Zoom meetings, and it's strange because throughout my leadership with ICBA, it's a lot of travel and it's a lot of in-person meetings, and this is a real shift. But I think, strangely enough, whether it's having the opportunity to meet with the president and some of his cabinet, or members of Congress or others, it's been effective, even doing it by video. So I've just embraced that. I'm not sure when I'll get on a plane again next, or where there'll be the next in-person meeting. But for now, I'm not going to let being grounded stop me from representing community banks and doing the best job I can.
Well, I'm sure that's true. And Noah, we'll be back to visit with you throughout your year. So we really appreciate you making a little time for us here, and I look forward to reconnecting down the line.
Great.
So yeah, thank you. And I want to thank everybody for watching. This has been BankBeat.biz, our video blog. Thanks very much. We'll look for you next time.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tom. Have a great day.